Hello and happy Friday. It's jrpg, and we are back playing Final Fantasy VI. I'm having an amazing week, and I hope that you are too. We attained about 100 more subscribers over the last couple of days. It's been just amazing, so I just want to start out with a big thank you to everybody who subscribed. It really means a lot to me. Now, what we're doing today is we've got to escape Narshe, where we are now, and head south to the Kingdom of Figaro. But before we do, we're going to head over to the beginner classroom. And this section is going to be a little bit dry, so if you want to skip ahead a couple of minutes to where we pick up the campaign again, I won't blame you, but for right now, let's head to the beginner classroom. This is a classroom for the beginner. Here we answer your questions about the world. Think of us as your advisors. And one thing I want to show up before we head inside is if you stand in a doorway, pop into the menu and back out, the door will be closed again and you'll kind of clip through it. You can use this to some interesting effects a little bit later, but I just wanted to show it off at my first opportunity. Now let's get inside to the classroom. This is water from a recovery spring. It'll restore your HP and MP. Such springs are located throughout the world. That's true, but there aren't actually that many of them, so throughout the world might be a bit of an exaggeration, but if we use it, we will immediately restore our HP and MP, which we don't need right now, but we're going to do it anyway. So this is the environmental science room. We're going to learn a little bit about the world. This is a save point, that blinking thing right next to him. At save points, you can use a sleeping bag or tent and also save a game. If you should perish, you'll automatically be able to play it from your last save. Though any gil, treasures, etc. you found will have to be found again, your level and experience data will be retained, which is interesting. You can save a game anywhere on the world map. And we're going to go ahead and step on it. An eerie glow surrounds you. Want info about save points? Actually, we just got some, so we're good. Now let's talk to this guy. Valuables are often hidden in pots such as this one. And we get a tincture for our trouble, which will recover a little bit of MP. Choose with the A button, cancel a choice with the B button, view the main menu with the X button. We know all that. Heard about relics? Relics give your party members a variety of abilities, and they are quite exciting. So, for example, Sprint Shoes double your speed, True Knight lets you shield others during battle, Dragoon Boots add the jump command to your battle list. Gauntlet allows you to hold a sword with both hands, use the main menu to equip up to 2 relics per person, and we'll do a little bit deeper of a dive into those later, but suffice to say they're really cool and really exciting. Use curative items to restore your HP. Staying at an inn will revive your party in full. Want to know how to ride a chocobo? I do. Press the A button or up on the control pad to go forward and steer with the control pad. Press the B button to dismount. Careful, once you get off, the bird will return to its pen, which works the same way it did in Final Fantasy IV, although the visual effect in this game is much cooler, which we'll see soon enough. When buying armor and weapons, you'll see some symbols next to your characters. Triangles pointing up indicate increasing battle power. Triangles pointing down indicate decreasing battle power. Equals indicates no change in battle power. And E means the item is already equipped on that character, which is very nice quality of life-wise. A symbol under a character means that person is now in your party. So buying weapons and armor is much more straightforward than just simply buying it, equipping it, and seeing if it's better. The game actually tells you beforehand, which is very nice. Let's open this treasure box. And it's a monster in a box. Now, fortunately for us, this is one of the weakest enemies in the game, if not the absolute weakest. So we're not going to really have a problem with this. But it's just supposed to teach you about the monster in a box mechanic, which, if you're a series fan, you already know about, but oh well. And he says, ha! Sometimes monsters lurk inside of treasure chests. You know, you could have told me that before I opened it, buddy. Thanks a lot. Let's move on to the next room. This guy up here just has the same thing to say as the guy outside, so we'll talk to you. If you select the wait mode from the config menu, you can take all the time you need to select spells or items without being attacked. And that is what we have on right now, right up here. And that's the default, and I think it's the way most people played the game for the first time, and I'm going to be flapping my lips at least somewhat during combat, so we're going to leave it that way, although you could switch it to active to get a little bit more of a challenge. Color changes indicate changes in status. So blue equals reflect, and my character will have a blue glow there. Yellow equals safe, defense up. Green equals shell, magic defense up. And red equals haste, speed up. That is a very good one. White equals slow, speed way down. and pink equals stop, time stops. That is one you don't want to see. I like that system, just that it gives you an idea of what status ailment you might be under, but it can be sometimes hard to visually distinguish what it is. White numerals appearing during battle are damage points. Green numerals are recovery points. Great. We already know that. In the back row, damage and attack power are halved. Change rows using the main menu. Press left on the control pad, then press the A button. And we may be using that, but I tend to leave everybody in the front row. I don't think it matters too much, but optimally, you would frequently put characters in the back row. Damage is more severe when caught in a pincer attack. Use care when running. I don't really know what running has to do with pincer attacks, but the point is that there are a number of different battle formations. There's pincers, side attacks, back attacks, surprises, and all kinds of cool stuff to keep battle kind of fresh and interesting. And I really like it. Run from some battles by pressing and holding both the L and R buttons, okay? A full meter in the lower right means the character will be next to accept battle commands. Press the X or Y button to pass that character's battle opportunity to the next character. Now, we talked about it a little bit in the last episode, but the visual elaboration on the active time battle system is very, very nice, and I really enjoy it. When selecting a spell, press the L or R button to select multiple targets. So we don't need, like Fire 2, for example, to select multi-targets, which is a similar system to Final Fantasy IV, but it is nice. During a battle, press left or right on the control pad to select row or defense. Defense cuts receive damage in half and works until your next command input. And once again, we're not really going to be using that too much, but it is good to know about. Alright, and let's move on to the advanced room. He says you might want to go out and get some experience in the world before coming in here, but we're going to go in there anyway. Now, this is maybe slightly spoilery. It's going to tell you about things that we haven't encountered yet, but we're going to talk to them all anyway. Need status info? In fact, I do. So clear, the enemy can't strike you, but you're an easy target for spells. By clear, of course, he means the spell Invis, where your character becomes transparent or invisible. Now, this is the source of probably the most famous bug in this game, which is commonly referred to as just the Invis Doom glitch. But the idea was that when something has invisible status, it becomes much, much easier to hit them with spells, which then removes the status. However, accidentally, it ignores all resistances or immunity, so instant death spells work 100% of the time, which means you can do it to things like bosses or basically anything. Now, I will show that maybe once, but we're not going to abuse it, but it is, I think, easy to see how such an oversight could have been made, because it works similar to, like, Muddle or Confuse, where you get hit and then the status ailment is removed. But yeah, this led to a pretty game-breaking bug, but it's kind of awesome. You'll revert to normal if the spell hits you. Yep, precisely. So Imp lose use of spells and commands, and you become a cute little imp. Named Kappa, actually. Zombie. HP drops to 0, and you attack party members. Use Revivify to reverse. That's kind of a new status ailment. Pretty unique to this game. I don't know if it's in any of the other games, but maybe somebody could let me know in the comments. For Muddled and Psych, you'll revert to normal when struck by a weapon. When multiple images of your character flash on the screen, weapons won't touch you. Now that's true, but each evade has a 25% chance of removing the status. Three-way attack indicates a fire, ice, and lightning attack. Okay. Reflect spells will fade over time and can't block certain magic attacks. Runic turns many magic attacks into MP, can be used repeatedly. That is the ability of a character we haven't met yet, but we'll see that fairly soon. Morph increases attack and magic power. Duration increases with battles fought. Once again, that's an ability we haven't encountered yet. Dance we have, though. So Dance and Rage, which I talked about in the intro, once selected, will continue until the battle is over. And you lose control of the character while that's active. And I want to talk about that for just a second. I think that's a very, I don't want to generalize, but I think it's a very Japanese idea of a fun or interesting mechanic. Whereas I think more the world at large doesn't find losing control of characters particularly fun. But that sort of design mechanic is all over this game, and it's kind of strange, but we'll see that when it comes up. Life 3, which is an amazing spell we won't be seeing for quite some time, automatically brought back even if status is affected. Regen HP gradually comes back, and use a creative spell or item on an undead creature for maximum damage. And I like that that mechanic is still intact from Final Fantasy IV. I think it's good as opposed to harm, which would only affect undead things, whereas you can use your healing or white magic to attack undead creatures. Near fatal status can result in special hidden skills. See what happens if you select Command Fight. Now that is a very, very interesting one, and let's talk about that for just a moment. These are referred to as desperation attacks. Now how that works is, it's the first iteration of the limit break idea, but it's a, well, you can tell it's a first draft of an idea in this game. So, how it works is there is a 1 in 16 chance to use a desperation attack upon use of the attack command if the character is at less than 1/8 HP and more than 25.6 seconds have elapsed in battle. There's a way around the HP restriction by exploiting a bug, but we'll talk about that more a little later on to avoid spoilers right now. Suffice to say, it's relatively unlikely you'll ever see a desperation attack unless you're actively trying to get one, because it would behoove you to heal the character or take some other action than attacking, and even then you only have the 1 in 16 chance. So this guy says, about Reflect. Reflect doesn't block spells that have been reflected off of others. Enemy protected by Reflect, try bouncing an attack off a Reflect-protected individual in your party. And that's nice to know. I mean, it works the same way in Final Fantasy IV, but it is very nice that somebody just comes out and says it. Let's check out this treasure box. We get a tonic, and let's find the one guy we haven't talked to yet. Here we go. Each Sword Tech sword has its own unique name. Sword Tech is also referred to as Bushido, but we'll go with Sword Tech just because that's what it's called in the American version. You'll gain more Sword Tech skills over time. All right, I think that's it. And the last thing that I wanted to do, we already touched on the desperation attacks and how those work, but I did want to just run down the stat screen here, your character sheet. So, let's go top to bottom from left to right, starting with Vigor. Vigor is actually Strength, which makes the stat make a lot more sense when you put it that way, but it has to do with your physical damage. Speed is basically the rate at which your active time battle meter fills up. So the higher speed stat, the faster you'll get a turn. Stamina is actually a pretty interesting one. That affects your chance to survive instant death attacks, affects how much damage you take from poison and other sort of like small amounts of damage over time, status ailments. It increases your healing from spells like Regen, and even a relic that we'll talk about once we get it. So magic power is fairly obvious. That has to do with your magic damage, but it also affects other skills that we'll talk about later. Battle power is going to be based on your equipped weapon, used with Vigor, and your level for damage calculations. Defense just straight up reduces your physical damage. And Evade should be obvious, but here's the thing. Evade is actually bugged and doesn't do anything. Your actual evade rate is just tied to your magic block percent, so unfortunately for Locke, instead of his evade being 15%, it's actually 2% right now. And that also means that certain relics that you find don't actually do anything. Anything that buffs your evade really doesn't do anything, which is a shame, but not that big of a deal. Moving on, magic defense reduces magic damage, and then your magic block percent is your chance to evade magic, but also just your straight up evade, and that's gonna wrap that up. All right, let's move on. Let's get back to the actual campaign, finally. So let's see what happens if we try to just go straight into the town. A soldier comes dashing up and says, "Eh, who might you be?" And Locke says, "This is the pits. We better hightail it southward to Figaro." And yeah, we should probably do that, so let's get a move on. We are not safe in Narshe, that is for sure. And you'll immediately notice that the entire overworld is rendered in Mode 7, which just looks awesome. Just a leafer, let's take it out quick. I should probably be using a Lock Steal command as much as possible. I talked a little bit about Steal and why I don't particularly love using it, because it's just such a pain and it's so rare that it actually works. But we will try to use it for these scenarios while we have Locke with us. This is going to require a multi-target fire spell, though. But we'll try stealing anyway. I just don't want to get myself in too much trouble. Alright, that worked just fine. Turns out that magic is very, very good. And just through the desert is going to be the castle. Wait, he says. Hey, oh, it's you. Proceed. Oh, thank you so much. This is Figaro, the desert castle. Yep, this is where we wanted to go. Now, we're just going to go straight to see the king, because there's not a ton to do right now. All these guys are going to block the various areas and just tell us to go see the king, so let's just do exactly that. One thing I do want to do, though, to walk back what I just said, is check out the item shop. We don't really need anything here, but we do have a dirk we can sell, so let's go ahead and do that now. And grab this treasure box. We get a soft potion. That is nice indeed. And if we pop over to the other room, there'll be a little bit of a shop in here. Let's take the treasures first. Get ourselves a tonic and an antidote and talk to this guy. Now, he's going to be selling tools. We don't know what these are for yet, but we're going to go ahead and purchase a noise blaster and a bio blaster. And just hang on to those for right now. And the last place we want to stop off is right behind the throne room. There's going to be a treasure box here. Let's just grab it now so I don't forget. And there he is, the king. Let's see what he has to say. And he says, "You mean this young woman?" And he somewhat rudely looks you up and down and turns his back. And Tara says, "Who do you think you are?" And he says, "Oh, sorry. How rude of me to turn my back to a lady." The young king of Figaro Castle, ally to the Empire, and a master designer of machinery. And his name is, of course, Edgar. Edgar says, "I am Edgar, king of Figaro." Locke says, "Surprise, someone like me knows a king?" And yes, a little bit, honestly. And Locke says, "Talk to you later." And he's out of there. Edgar says, "So you're an Imperial soldier. No problem. Figaro and the Empire are allies," which is kind of weird, right? We don't like the Empire, so I wonder what's going on with this. But he says, "Please relax while you're here. It's not in my blood to harm a lady." And Tara says, "Look, why are you helping me? Is it because of my abilities?" And Edgar says, "I'll give you 3 reasons. First of all, your beauty has captivated me. Second, I'm dying to know if I'm your type. I guess your abilities would be a distant third." Tara's like, what's with you anyway?" Edgar says, "I guess my technique's getting a bit rusty." Tara says, I suppose a normal girl would have found him dashing, but I'm hardly normal. And that's the thing, though. Normal girls do not find him dashing. At all, in fact. And they tell us, feel free to wander about, so we will do just that. And we'll notice that on our way, I heard the Empire is using something called magic. Gestalt has harnessed the power of magic. Who can stop him now? And that's a good question. It seems like nobody. However, Tara can use magic, so the Empire is not the only organization that has access to magic. It doesn't look like it, but this castle incorporates some of the most high-end devices in existence. For example, oops, they're all top secret. Almost let it get away, but to his credit, he did not. Figaro and the Empire are allies. So you say. And Figaro Castle is the most modern structure in the world. In fact, it is, and we'll see a little bit more about that later, but first, let's take a couple of these stairwells we didn't take earlier. This is basement 1, and this guy's gonna say, beyond is the Figaro Castle engine room. We're ready to leave at a moment's notice. Well, let's check it out. That's dangerous, he says. It blocks our path, so we can't go down there for now, so we'll just leave it. And what about over here? This is the jail area. Let's talk to the attendant. These thieves have been terrorizing the vicinity. Stay away from them. Well, I'm gonna ignore that advice, and I'm gonna try talking to him. This guy's kind of freaking out a little bit. Hey, let us out of here. This one says, I demand to see Edgar. How dare they keep us in this stinking pit? And this reminds me a little bit of the mages being jailed in Final Fantasy IV, but perhaps a little less tragic. Now I gotta wait for this guy to come all the way back. Come on, buddy. There we go. He says, relax, they're just blowing off steam. But I'm telling you, there's no sense keeping us here. We're just small potatoes compared to the real threat lurking out there, and King Edgar knows it. Yeah, that's probably a fact, right? And this one says, I'm Lone Wolf the Pickpocket. And, he's gonna come up a little bit later, but for now, let's just remember what Lone Wolf looks like. He's got kind of a different sprite from everybody else. Now let's take one of these paths that was blocked off before. This guy says, scholars the world over are doing research on magic. Silly people, scholars. They are, in fact, a silly bunch. Long ago, a force called magic existed. People who used magic were called mage knights. So I wonder if that would mean that Terra should be called a mage knight. Or maybe she's a descendant of one of them? Not clear right now. But I just love the layout of this place. This is Figaro, the desert castle. The way you can kind of come outside, and it's just really, really cool, really well designed. I love it. All right, let's head in here. And talk to this guy all the way at the top of the tower. Weapons and items manufactured here are sent to South Figaro. And that's all he has to say. It seems like a bit of a hike to learn a little bit about, like, I don't know, economic ongoings. But I do want to talk to everyone, so I'm glad that's out of the way. I have to tell you, I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on some sprint shoes, just to speed up the walk speed a little bit. But let's take the left side over here. It's the one place we haven't really gone. And it asks if I need a rest. The answer is no for right now, but let's talk to these women. Though Edgar showers his attentions on women, most are too smart to pay any attention to him. And this one says he recently tried to hit on the High Priestess. Surely he's talked to you? And Terra doesn't reply. Now, there's something that I want to say about Edgar, but perhaps it can wait just a moment here. Let's finish up getting some dialogue. And I believe these guys are just going to tell us that we're in Figaro, which we already know. But I like the soldiers on patrol on chocobos. That's just great. And this little girl says, His Highness said he'd marry me when I get older. And I think that's the last piece of dialogue I want to pick up before I make this point. But this guy says the Empire has smashed the 3 cities on the southern continent. Just a matter of time till they come up here. And yeah, the Empire is on the move. We are supposedly allies with them, but that seems somewhat unlikely. Now, before I talk to the High Priestess, there is something that I want to talk about with regard to Edgar. So through a modern lens, he definitely comes off as creepy, right? But I think his behavior was supposed to be played for laughs. He's supposed to be a harmless, incorrigible flirt in the vein of, like, Brock from Pokemon, right? Not a harasser. 90s Japanese humor doesn't exactly land the way it was intended nowadays, so if the game were coming out today, I think his character would probably be written a little more carefully to avoid any confusion about whether he's supposed to be likable, or at least have some kind of reckoning with regard to his behavior included in his character arc, which unfortunately does not end up happening in the game. So, you could look at it as a superior coming onto his subordinates, which for obvious reasons feels queasy, to put it generously, but I'm going to acknowledge this writing shortcoming, but chalk it up to insensitivity from a bygone era and just move on. Alright, let's talk to the High Priestess. The matron says Edgar has a twin brother. He was such a nice boy. The youth says, Brother, what's wrong with father? What's all this talk of his successor? And Edgar replies, Are you blind? Look how thin his face has become. The youth goes, What is it? Still not grasping this? Brother. Tears? Edgar's twin brother who traded the throne for his own freedom. And this is another one of my just favorite characters. Oh, man. And we are going to give him the default name. Now, I know that the Japanese pronunciation of his name would be Sabine, but I am not going to call him Sabine. I'm going to call him Sabin, like cabin, and that's just the end of it. So we'll name him Sabin. The matron says, yes, his name was Sabin. Oh, he looked so like his father. When he ran away, he was a sweet little child. I wonder what he's like now. Something tells me we're going to find out. But that's everything to do in the castle, so let's go back to the throne room. With this slow walking speed. One thing in a lot of the remakes, or different iterations of this game, is that they made it so that you could sprint by just holding down a button. But I think it's supposed to be a trade-off with the Sprint Shoes relic, where it's supposed to occupy a relic slot in order for you to get that walk speed. The Chancellor says this whole business of the succession was so repugnant to Sabin, the king's brother, that he fled the castle forever. The succession was settled with a coin toss. And that's interesting, to be sure. All right, let's talk to Edgar now. And he says, well, how do you like my castle? King Edgar, someone from the Empire to see you. Probably Kefka. And judging by this music, it absolutely is. Phooey. Emperor Gastal's stupid orders. Edgar, you pinhead, why do you have to live in the middle of nowhere? These recon jobs are the pits. Ahem, there's sand on my boots. God, he's the worst. Soldiers reply, yes, sir, all set, sir. And there's that laugh. Idiots, he shouts. Sir Kefka, what on earth do... And Kefka replies, out of my way, and shoves him aside. And let's talk to the soldiers first. Edgar says, I thought we were allies. What are you doing in my domain? And he says to the other soldier, you've been busy down south, looking for more cities to destroy? The trooper says, that's for us to know, which is not a comforting reply, but let's talk to Kefka. And Edgar asks, what brings Kefka, humble servant of Emperor Gestal, into our lowly presence? Kefka replies, a girl of no importance recently escaped from us. We heard she found refuge here. Edgar says, this wouldn't have anything to do with this witch everyone's been whispering about, would it? Kefka says, lies. She merely stole something of minor value. Is she here? Edgar says, that's a tough one. there are more girls here than grains of sand out there. I can't keep track of them all. Kefka replies, I'd hate to be you if we find out you're lying. Mwaha! I truly hope nothing happens to your precious Figaro. Yeah, that would not be good. Locke says, I'd say that guy's missing a few buttons. And Edgar replies, where's Tara? She's, of course, hiding out in the throne room. Edgar says, take her to her room. Edgar says, I'd love to chat with you, but the Chancellor and I must plan our strategy. Sometimes I hate being a king, if you'll excuse me. And Locke says, follow me, and that's what we're gonna do. Interestingly, you can kind of beat him there, but let's just follow him. And we already explored this area, so we know that our room is going to be over in the sort of tower on this side. And Locke says, don't you worry about a thing. And Tara says, you're Locke, right? Edgar told me about you. Is it true you're a thief? And Locke says, that's treasure hunter. And now he gives us a little bit of what we kind of already suspected. So on the surface, Edgar pretends to support the Empire. The truth is, he's collaborating with the Returners, an organization opposed to the Empire. I'm his contact with that group. The old man you met in Narshe is one of us. Tara says, Empire, but I'm a soldier of the Empire. Locke says, that's not true. They were using you. Things are different now. Tara says, I don't understand. What should I do? Locke says, I can't tell you what to do. You don't have to decide right now. You'll soon find your way. But how will I know which way is right? And that is a very good question. What the? Yep, the entire castle is on fire. What's happening? Soldier replies, it's the Empire. It's Kefka. Because of course it is. What are you doing? Fire, fire. A little bit of a Beavis and Butthead impression, I would say. Let's talk to these guys freaking out. Yep, they are just screaming fire. So what does Kefka have to say? Bring me the girl now. And Edgar replies, I don't know what you're talking about. And Kefka replies, then welcome to my barbecue. Now, I want to talk about that line for just a second. In the Japanese version, he says, then burn to death there. And the translation there is a Woolseyism, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. There's a few more coming our way. But Edgar tells the attendant, get ready. The soldier replies, yes, sir. Kefka asks, changed your mind? And Edgar says, I guess I have no choice. Or maybe I do! Kefka says, shameful that a king should flee, leaving his people behind. How utterly delightful. Edgar says, jump! And here come Locke and Tara. We are out of here. But are we really leaving the people behind? Okay, dive now, he says. Yahoo! Figaro submerge mode engaged. No one can touch the people of Figaro, says the Chancellor. And they did tell us that this is the most technologically advanced modern structure in the world, and that is because it can dive beneath the sand. And there's Kefka just laying on the desert where the castle used to be. Go! Get them! And so here is another different translation, where here he says, kill them. Fortunately, these Magitech soldiers are not too much of a threat. But we're going to go ahead and fire off a fire spell, so to speak. And we're going to use our noise blaster from Edgar. And this shocks Edgar, somewhat understandably. Locke says, Edgar, what's the matter? You look positively spooked. Edgar says, did you just see what I saw? Yeah, this kid seems loaded for bear. She's amazing. That was magic. M-A-G-I-C, magic. Locke's like, magic? She used magic? And they begin whispering to each other. Edgar says, Tara, where on earth did you learn that? Sorry, And they realize that they've kind of embarrassed her here, so Locke says, look, I didn't mean to make such a big deal of this. Edgar says, me either. It's just that I've never actually seen magic before. Where did you... And Locke steps in here. Edgar, Tara can use magic and we can't. That's the only difference between us. The fact is, we could use her help. And Tara says, thank you, Locke. Thank you, Edgar. And she gives him a wink, which causes them, of course, to faint. Stop swooning. And I imagine the Magitech soldiers are like, do you guys mind? We're trying to kill you here. Unfortunately for them, they are deeply confused now. And so we're just gonna not attack them physically until they kind of beat each other to death. And one thing I want to mention is that Edgar comes with the auto crossbow, which is why we didn't have to buy it. And it is incredibly good. So we get 2 potions for our trouble and win the fight. Bravo, Figaro. And we leave Kefka in the dust. And he says, son of a submariner, they'll pay for this. And that is another Woolseyism, which, if you don't know, Ted Woolsey is the translator for this game and many other games. And so the translation here is likely the word kuso, which is an expletive expressing dismay, usually translated to damn or shit. And I would like to explain why he made this choice using his own words, which are as follows. There's a certain level of playfulness and sexuality in Japanese games that just doesn't exist here, meaning the States, basically because of Nintendo of America's rules and guidelines. Now, some people like his translations and some people don't, but they are at the very least memorable and iconic, so I respect most of his choices, like this one here. Locke says, this is great. And I imagine riding a chocobo is great. Tara says, was that a bad person? I'm scared. Edgar says, Tara, there's someone I'd like you to meet. We're members of the Returners. Our mentor Bannon would certainly like to meet you. Magic is going to be the key to winning this war. Tara says, magic? Tara has magical powers that espers seem to react to her. Can there be some connection? Tara says, I haven't the foggiest. It just seems natural to me that I have use of this power. Edgar replies, somewhat insensitively, but no human is born with the powers you seem to have, and... implying, of course, that she's not human. Edgar says, I apologize. And Terra says, what should I do? Edgar says, I'm sure the Empire is going to come after you, which is true. They have been for basically the entire game so far. If they get their hands on you, the world's finished. Terra, you want to understand your own powers, right? Then I think we need to consult with Bannon. Terra doesn't reply. Locke says, please. Edgar says, okay. To the south, there's a cave that leads to South Figaro. And that is where we're going to head. It's right over this way. And I just wanted to point out this Mode 7 3D effect for the overworld, even on the Chocobos. It's so awesome. But here's the cave, so let's hop off. And we're going to head inside and make our way to South Figaro, but that's going to have to wait until next time because I'm all out of time for today. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Final Fantasy Friday.